First off, thank you very much. Thank you for the nice introduction, Mr. Treasurer, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I did show up at 6 o'clock and somebody reminded me that in Kenya you work on different time, and it all came back to me real fast. I was like, okay. So this is really an honor for me to be here. I have a special place in my heart for Kenya, and I'll give you a little story about why that is, and then I'll lead into why I became mayor and why it's so important to have great elections. So, for years, for 35 years, I worked in the restaurant industry. I sold restaurant equipment. So when you walk into a restaurant, you see all the beautiful tables or the fryers in the back or the big refrigerators. I sold all of that. I worked for a company up here, Cisco, Minnesota, which you may be familiar with. I then started working for International Dairy Queen and ended my career at Buffalo Wild Wings. But it was while I was working at Dairy Queen that I realized I needed to do something in my life that would change, that would leave a mark, so to speak. I wanted to leave my mark in the sand in this world, and I wasn't doing it by selling restaurant equipment. People would call, Dairy Queen owners would call me on a Friday afternoon when I was trying to get out of there, and they would yell at me because their blizzard machines weren't working. How many of you like Dairy Queen blizzards? Yeah, the whole place should be raising their hand. They'd be yelling at me and saying their machine wasn't working, and I'm thinking inside my mind, those things are built.
Excuse me, please use this one.
Oh, thank you.
Let me grab this.
Okay, got that?
Yeah.
Got this? Both? I'm just gonna lean like this. So these blizzard machines are built like Sherman tanks. They don't break down. And so I'd say to these people, is it plugged in? And they'd get mad and go, of course it's plugged in, it works all the time, it's plugged in. Say, okay, well, I'm not gonna talk to you any further until you go and see if it's plugged in. And they'd come back to the phone and they'd say, okay, thank you very much, and hang up on me. But that wasn't being very fulfilling in my life. So what ended up happening is I went to visit my son's school on Meet Your Teacher night, and at the time my son was an 8th grader. And there was a teacher there talking about a little project that she was going to put together that involved building a sand dam in Kenya. And it was, I can't remember the name of the city, it was south of Nairobi. At any rate, I can't remember the name of the city offhand, but I'm listening to her make her presentation, and she's talking about how around the world, half the people in the world lacked access to a clean toilet. Not half, but at the time it was several millions of people lacked access to clean water. She told me the stories of how young girls, 10, 11, 12, all the way through their adulthood, once they became women, were carrying water for many, many miles, and they were carrying just awful water. And that was all that they had. And I'm sitting in the chair in the back of the room thinking, where the heck have I been? I'm an educated person. I had no idea that this was even going on in the world. And you mean to tell me that half of the people in the world lacked access to sanitation? It broke my heart. But it was also something that I could do something about it. So we started a little project at the school, and we challenged these kids to raise $3,000. That's a lot of money, especially for kids who are in middle school. We challenged them to raise $3,000. And then we knew we needed 10, but myself, I thought, well, I can throw $3,000 into it. And the other teacher said, well, I can throw $3,000 into it too. And what ended up happening is we taught these kids about the world water crisis. We showed them pictures of the people and the children that they would be helping to have good, clean water. Those kids went into action and raised $13,000. Absolutely. That was 10 years ago this month that we did this. But what we did is we saw the power that children had to take action and make things happen. And I know at one point these young girls came up to me, I think they were Girl Scouts, and they had taken safety pins and beads, and they had made them into little trinkets or little angels that you could put on your counter or hang on a Christmas tree or do whatever. And they told me that they were going to make these things and sell them. And I thought, well, okay, I'm at that age where in my mind I'm thinking I don't want one more thing in my house that I have to dust. So I empowered them and said, go off and do this. Those girls raised almost $1,500 just by selling $5 little angels, little beaded angels that they made. But they did it not because they were making angels and selling them. In their minds, they were making angels and saving lives. And so again, that was the power of the kids. So from that one experience, we then started a nonprofit called H2O for Life, where we partnered schools in the United States with schools in developing nations. Many of those schools were in Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Nicaragua, Mexico, in different places where they needed water. But we always gave the kids a picture of the school, some pictures of the students that they were helping, and we gave them a follow-up story. So once they had funded the work that needed to be done, whether that was digging a well, putting in a rain catchment tank, doing whatever the case might be, we would send them pictures of toilets, and they were proud of this. So it was really a life-changing event for me. That's how I got involved in Kenya. So I had the opportunity in 2009 and again in 2011 to go to Kenya and met with phenomenal people. Just people who were so passionate about their country. And I met with so many children who were going to schools and didn't have clean water, but were looking for the hope of having clean water and having access to a private latrine for both boys and girls and teachers. I went to one school where USAID was providing school lunches, and it was nothing more than some sort of a almost like a mush. It was a very it had a lot of vitamins, and it was very, very good for the kids, but it was made with this cruddy water. I'm in a church, I can't really tell you what I'm thinking about the water, but what the teacher was doing was withholding the food if these kids didn't bring a jug of water to share among the other students. Well, now in some of these cases, these kids didn't have access to water. So they were expecting the kids to walk 2 or 3 miles to get a jug of water, to bring it back to the school. By that time, they've missed half the day. And so then they would not get any food. And so we had a talk with the teacher or the director of the school and said, that's not what US taxpayers expect of the food that they're providing at this school. They want kids eating it. And they want kids to get an education, because with an education, they move beyond some of these terrible situations. And he listened and never held back the food again, as far as I know. But there was another situation where great books had been provided to a school, but the teacher was afraid that they would get dirty. And so he locked them up in a room and never put them out for the kids to use. And again, we had a discussion with them. But these are the things that were happening at the time. It was as if some of this stuff had value, more value to the teachers than it had to the students. Or let me rephrase that. It had more value for the teacher if he could keep it from the students. And so that is part of what I saw as some of the corruption or problems with government in Kenya. Is things of value, and especially when you were in areas of great poverty, great despair, that people did not want, those people in power did not want to share their power. That's not the way we as Americans think the world should work, nor is it how I think all of you gathering here today and hearing the words, especially from you, Mr. Treasurer, about making sure you have somebody in power who works to make everybody successful. That's the goal, is to make everybody successful. So now let's bring it back home to what I'm here for, which is local politics and how things run at the local level. I'd like to think there's no corruption in politics here in the United States. That would be a very naive remark for me to make, because we certainly have corruption too, but we have laws that help prevent some of that. For example, me as a locally elected official cannot receive any kind of a gift from anybody in my constituency that is over a value of $5. So that leaves, maybe you want to give me a pen, or, if we're at a cheap drinking establishment, you want to buy me a cheap beer, I can do that. I can only give you, as my constituents, anything that is $5 or less. So I am not capable, I'm not able, within the means of the law, to buy your votes. There's something wrong when you're in a society where people can buy your votes. And so we work really hard, even at the local level, to make sure that elections are very transparent, very fair, and represent what the voters want. Now, in America, and I know other countries in the world, not many of us vote, which is really a sad state of affairs. The majority of people in America don't go out and cast their vote, and they especially don't do that at the local level. They'll do it at a national level when we have like a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton running, and it gets all the press and it does all of this. But I'll ask all of you where you can influence your lives the most here in America. What vote can you influence your life the most? So if you're one vote among, 50 million votes, are you influencing that vote? Are you influencing your life that much? But at a local level, when only 3,000 people might go out and vote, and you cast a vote, there have been elections in New Brighton where city council members have won by just 6 votes. If you had not voted, and if people had not gone out and voted, that gentleman may not have been elected, or somebody else might have been elected. But it shows you the importance of, if you want somebody elected, and if you want that government power to be in place, the most important thing you can do is vote. Then trust, at least here in America, that the roadblocks are in place to avoid corruption. On the other hand, what's one of the biggest discussions we're having at a national level is the Russian influence on the American vote this last election season. So corruption can be everywhere, but it's very hard at the local level, very, very hard. So one of my messages to you here tonight is to make sure you participate in local government and make sure you participate in your communities. So as an example, in my community, before I ever decided to become mayor, I go back to that point in time where I said I wanted to give more to my world. And one of the things I did was obviously the international level with H2O for Life. But on a local level, I joined the Rotary Club. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Rotary, especially coming from Kenya. The Rotary is very strong there. I joined the local Rotary Club. I joined the local Lions Club. I joined the Historical Society in New Brighton. I joined the local festival, Stockyard Days committee, so that I could help influence how people had a great time within our community. And I got to be known around town because of my involvement in all of these things. So for you, and especially the kids that are in the audience here tonight, I'd say reach out and join those clubs at school, join the organizations around town, and have an influence on how your life here is in America. I find it absolutely remarkable that a group of people here tonight, a group of Kenyans, or I should say a group of Americans from Kenya, are here tonight working to make their country better. So you're sitting here in Minnesota working to make the elections better in Kenya. I commend you for that. I am so proud to have all of you be a part of America. That's what has made this country great, is that we have opened our arms to lots and lots of different people, lots of different faiths, lots of different colors, lots of different countries, and that has been what has made America great. So to have you in the community here, whether it's in New Brighton or Shoreview or in the greater Twin Cities area or Rochester or wherever it might be, to have you being here and organizing yourself to influence an election in a good way in Kenya is remarkable. And that, I think, is what you're fighting for, is so that your Kenyan brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, cousins, whomever, can enjoy the same rights that you're enjoying here in America in their own country. That makes me really proud. I'm very humbled to be here among all of you. It takes a lot of guts, it takes a lot of nerve and moxie and courage and all these great things to know that what you're doing here has an influence halfway around the world. And you know, I'm running for a little election in New Brighton, and I'm hoping very much to make my community better. But what you're doing here is making the world better. And I just want to thank you for, number one, for who you are, for being courageous people, and I want to thank you for allowing me to talk to you about this, because quite frankly, I've already learned more tonight from you than I think you learned from me. But again, I'm really proud that you're in our community and that I'm in your community. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.